Good evening, my darlings. My name is Edith Holloway. I'm 78 years old, and I've lived my whole life in the same house, nestled just outside the pine woods of Code Hollow, Vermont. People always said this place had too many trees, too much fog, too many stories. And I suppose they were right, because one of them was mine. I don't tell this story easily. There are things buried in those woods that ought to stay buried. Memories, whispers, faces. But I've kept it to myself for far too long. And lately, the nights have been getting colder, darker, like they're waiting for something. So if you're listening, really listening, stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you happened, and I don't care if no one believes me anymore. It started in the fall of 1993. My grandson, Nathaniel, Nate, was 8 years old. Wild little thing, always chasing frogs, always with dirt on his cheeks and sticks in his pockets. He had this laugh that could light up a whole room, sharp and silly, like he was always in on a joke the world hadn't figured out yet. We were raising him after the accident. My daughter, his mama, died when he was 3. Car crash in the snow. His father wasn't in the picture, so it was just me and Nate in this creaky old farmhouse near the edge of Hollow Pines. I kept the stove burning, baked too many pies, and read him stories before bed. But he loved the forest. No matter how many times I warned him, Nate would sneak off toward those woods. "Just a little adventure, Grandma," he'd say, grinning. I'd find him hours later, twigs in his hair, pockets full of mushrooms and moss. Until one day, I didn't find him at all. October 17th, 1993. The air smelled like frost and firewood. Nate said he was going out back to look for fox tracks. He didn't come back for supper. By nightfall, I called the sheriff. They searched for 2 weeks. Dogs, volunteers, helicopters. Nothing. Not a footprint, not a scrap of clothing. Just the trees, silent and still, like they'd swallowed him whole. People whispered, said maybe he ran off, said maybe I wasn't watching him close enough. But I knew he wouldn't leave me. Something took him. Years passed, decades. I never moved. I couldn't. I left the back porch light on every night, just in case. And every year on October 17th, I baked his favorite, apple pie with cinnamon crust. I'd set a slice on the table facing the woods. I know it sounds mad, but hope makes you do strange things. Then, last fall, 30 years later to the day, I heard knocking at the door. 3 soft knocks, like fingers that didn't want to be heard. I opened it, and there he was, standing on my porch, barefoot, his face pale, lips blue from the cold, same striped sweater. My throat locked like it forgot how to make sounds. My arms went around him before my brain caught up, held him so tight I was afraid he'd vanish again like mist. But he didn't. He was real, breathing, shivering in the cold. I brought him inside, sat him by the stove, wrapped him in the same green quilt I'd sewn the winter after he disappeared, with the little frogs embroidered in the corners. He didn't even flinch, just sat there, legs swinging off the chair like he'd come in from playing tag. I knelt in front of him and took his face in my hands. "Nate," I said softly. "Sweetheart, what happened? Where did you go?" He looked at me, same big eyes, brown like maple syrup, but there was something behind them, like glass, like something watching through him. "I don't know," he said. "It was the trees. They opened up." My heart stumbled. "What do you mean, baby?" "I was chasing a bird, a red one. It flew between the trees and I followed it. But the trees weren't trees anymore. They turned. They bent down and whispered. They told me to hush, to be still." He looked at the fire, eyes distant. They said time moves wrong in their roots. My hands went cold. He didn't remember much else. Not what he ate, not where he slept. There was music, he said, but not for dancing, for waiting. His little voice dropped to a whisper. They were waiting for someone. I called the sheriff that same night, told them, shakily, that Nate had come home. 30 years gone, but not aged a day. Of course they thought I'd lost it. Until they saw him, until they took his fingerprints and ran the DNA. It was him, and that's when the real questions started. FBI, doctors, scientists, they all came. They ran tests, blood work, scans. His body was healthy, but his cells, they said, hadn't aged since 1993. One man in a white coat kept repeating, "This defies biological law." Another whispered, "This is impossible." But I didn't care what they said. I had my boy back, or so I thought, because strange things started happening after Nate came home. The first thing I noticed was the birds. They stopped coming. The feeders I kept full all year went untouched. No song outside the window. No wings in the sky. Just silence. Then the clocks. Everyone in the house stopped ticking at 2:17 a.m., the exact time I'd last seen Nate in 1993. Even after I changed the batteries, rewound the hands, every night, same thing. And Nate? He wouldn't sleep in his old room, said it was too loud. "But there's nothing in there, sweetheart," I told him. He looked at me, eyes wide. "That's the problem," he said. "Nothing is louder than anything." He started drawing, too. Hundreds of pages, all the same image, trees, twitch. Just whispered something like a chant, over and over. I moved closer, and then I heard it. Not his voice, but something answering from deep in the forest, like creaking wood, like breath through leaves, like something waking up. I grabbed Nate's shoulders, pulled him gently toward me. He blinked, like he'd just woken from a dream. "What were you saying?" I asked, brushing the damp hair from his forehead. He looked at me with that too old look in his eyes, like someone who had learned to lie to survive. "Nothing," he said. "I was just remembering." But I heard it. I know what I heard. Something was whispering back. That night, I pushed the dresser against the back door, closed every curtain, lit the fireplace even though the house wasn't cold. I couldn't explain it, but there was something about the way the shadows gathered in the corners, like they were leaning in closer. Nate didn't sleep. He sat in the hallway outside my room, legs curled up, sketching. When I peeked out around midnight, I saw the drawing in his lap. It was me, sleeping in my bed, and something standing over me, tall, crooked, arms like tree branches stretching across the ceiling, its head bent toward my face, and underneath it, he had written in small, shaking letters, "It remembers you too." I started locking the doors, not just at night, but during the day. I kept Nate close. He ate, he drank, he even laughed sometimes. But there was something not settled inside him, like the air inside him didn't match the air outside. I brought him to town once, just once. We needed groceries, and I thought the fresh air might do him good. But as soon as we stepped onto Main Street, people started staring. An old man in the bakery dropped his coffee cup. A woman in the post office crossed herself. A little girl pointed at Nate and said, "That boy's all wrong." We didn't stay long. That night, Nate spoke again in his sleep, Not whispers this time, full words, in a voice that didn't sound like his own. I stood in the doorway, hand gripping the frame, as he sat up in bed and said, "The forest is hungry, Grandma. It gave me back, but it's still waiting for what it's owed." I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I found pine needles on the floor by his bed. That might not seem strange to you. We live near the forest, after all. But these were wet, fresh. Not from fear, from recognition. Like he already knew where I was going. Like he remembered what I would find. I followed the trail Nate used to take as a boy, the one behind the shed where the fence sags and the moss grows thick as carpet. The forest had changed. Trees stood closer than I remembered, leaning in like they'd grown curious. The air was colder, heavier, like walking underwater. I passed the old deer blind Jack built decades ago, past the stream where Nate caught salamanders in his little plastic bucket. Every step deeper into hollow pines made my skin crawl, not from fear, not exactly, from familiarity. Like I'd been here before, in dreams I didn't remember. The compass spun in my hand even when I stood still. Birds didn't sing, no wind, no insects, just silence. And then, in a small clearing, I saw it. A tree, massive, older than the others, bark black as coal, roots twisting like frozen snakes, and at the base, a small empty space between the roots, like a doorway or a mouth. Around it were scraps of things, toys, a little red whistle, a baby shoe, a cracked marble, all laid out like offerings. I knelt beside the roots, heart hammering, and whispered, "What do you want from him? Why did you send him back?" The answer didn't come in words. The earth answered. I felt it beneath my knees, the faintest heartbeat. And then a sound. Breathing, but not mine. I turned, and there was Nate. He shouldn't have followed me. But there he was, barefoot again, like the night he returned, his eyes wide, sad. Older now, not in face, but in spirit. He looked at me like someone preparing to say goodbye. "I had to come," he whispered. "It won't let you leave unless I'm here." The tree behind me groaned, wood bending like bone. "I thought you were safe now," I said. "I thought it let you go." He shook his head slowly. "It didn't let me go. It lent me, to see if you'd remember me, if you'd still love me." I stepped forward. "Of course I love you. You're my—" But he interrupted, soft. "I'm not just yours anymore." From the shadows behind the tree they came, children, dozens, all dressed from different times, pinafores, overalls, tattered coats, some barefoot, some holding broken dolls or melted crayons, all of them wrong. Their movements didn't match their bodies. Their eyes never blinked at the same time. Some mouths moved, but no words came. And Nate, he stepped toward them. "They live inside it now," he said, "pieces of them. It keeps the parts that are easiest to forget, the memories no one holds on to. That's why it was so quiet before I came back. No one remembered me." He looked at me then. "But you did." Tears filled my eyes. I never stopped. He smiled. Not until he held out his hand. In his palm lay the little drawing he made the night before. Me in bed, the shadow watching. And now, another line had been added. The shadow had my face. I knelt down, eye to eye with him. "If it has to take someone," I said quietly, "then take me. Let him go." The forest stilled. Even the cold pulled back, like the woods were listening. But Nate shook his head. "No, Grandma, that's not how it works." He stepped back toward the tree. "It's not about taking, it's about holding on. holding tight enough that even time lets go. The children parted. The roots of the tree yawned wider. He looked over his shoulder at me, eyes shining. "You remembered me. That means I'm not lost." And then he turned to the dark and whispered, "I give you back the pieces, but I keep the love." The air cracked like thunder under the skin of the world, and then silence. Just trees, just wind, just me. Nate was gone. I stood there for hours, I think. The tree was still. No mouth, no heartbeat, no children, just roots and bark, still and ancient as stone. The drawing Nate had shown me lay at my feet, but now it was blank, not erased, emptied. And I knew he'd taken something with him when he left. Or maybe he'd left something in me. I walked home in silence. The compass in my pocket was still spinning. That night, I left the porch light on like I always had. But this time, I wasn't waiting for Nate, I was listening. The house changed after that, slowly at first. The clock started ticking again, but backward. Just a few seconds here and there, like time had hiccups. I heard whispering from empty rooms, the kind you can almost understand if you don't try too hard. The birds returned, but they didn't sing. They just watched. A week after the forest, I found a new drawing on the kitchen table. Same style, same hand. It showed our house from above, from a height no child could draw from. Windows dark, one figure inside. Me. And in the chimney smoke rising from the roof, a face. Long, hollow, bark where skin should be. The caption read, "She followed him home." I didn't know who she was, not until the mirrors started lying. At first it was subtle, a blink delayed, a smile that lingered too long. Then I saw myself reflected in the hallway mirror one night, standing behind my own shoulder like I was watching me. Not a trick of the eye, she moved first. Nate came back once more, just once. I woke to find him sitting at the edge of my bed, still 8 years old, face pale in the moonlight. He smiled, soft and sad. "I'm not really here," he said. "Only the part of me you kept." I wanted to hug him, but She thinks memory is a door. Then he looked at me one last time and said, "You have to choose what stays open." And then he was gone. The next morning, a pine needle lay on my pillow. I live alone. The doors were locked. But the chimney was cold. After that night, I started hearing humming from inside the walls. Not the kind that comes from pipes or wires. This was melodic, low, soft. The kind of tune a mother might hum to a child rocking slowly in a chair. It didn't scare me at first, just made me feel watched. Then the pictures in the hallway started to change. Family photos I dusted for decades. Jack in his uniform, my daughter blowing candles, Nate's muddy face and that old tire swing. They all began to shift, slowly, like something was brushing them from the inside. One by one, the figures faded, until only I remained, in every single frame, alone. And behind me, in the background of each picture, that same crooked shape appeared. Not clear, just shadow. Tall, watching. It had followed Nate, and now it was following me. I couldn't take it anymore. I went back to the forest, this time in the daylight. The tree was still there, but now there was something nailed to its bark. A page, yellowed and damp, a drawing of a house I didn't recognize. 2 stories, big porch, boarded windows. But written on the back in Nate's hand were the words, "She remembers her home." I brought the drawing to town, asked around. Most folks shrugged. But old Mr. Tiller, the one who runs the antique shop near the train station, turned pale when I showed it to him. "That's the Greer house," he said. "Burned down in '58, family inside. They never found the bodies. Locals say the woods reclaimed it." I asked him where it stood. He said, "Right where your land starts, Edith. It was there before your house was built. That night, I dreamed I was a little girl again, running barefoot through pines, cold air on my cheeks. But I wasn't me. I wore a dress I'd never owned, had hands smaller than I remembered, and behind me, something was calling in a soft, brittle voice. "Come back, little one. I saved your place." I turned in the dream, and the forest blinked. Not the trees, the whole forest, eyes everywhere, watching. When I woke, there were pine needles in my mouth. I tried to ignore it, to go about my days, bake, clean, pretend the house was just old, not haunted by something ancient and forgotten. But you can only pretend for so long before the pretending starts to pretend back. That's when the knocking began again, not at the door, from inside the closets. One knock, then silence. 2 knocks, then breathing. 3 knocks, and then I'd hear her voice, low, kind, almost sweet. "Let me in, Grandma." I'd been waiting. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my armchair by the fire, the cold creeping up through the floorboards, the hum in the walls turning into something more like a lullaby, but sung in a language I didn't know and didn't want to learn. By morning, the photos had changed again. This time it wasn't just me in the frames. In each picture, something new had appeared in the background. A girl in a faded dress, standing just beyond focus, sometimes in the doorway, sometimes in the trees, once curled at the foot of my bed. Her face was never clear, always blurred, like the film couldn't quite hold her shape. But the worst part was the feeling, not fear, familiarity, like I should know her. That day, I found a small object on the front porch, something I hadn't seen in decades. A doll, porcelain, cracked, one blue eye missing, the other clouded. I remembered it, but not from Nate, not from my daughter, from me. It was mine, from when I was a girl. But how could that be? I hadn't seen it since I was 6 years old, before the fever, before we moved away from the first house, before the dreams began. I brought it inside with shaking hands, set it on the mantel, and just stared. That evening, I sat with an old shoebox of letters in my lap, thinking maybe if I looked far enough back I could trace her, this girl, this ghost, to someone real, a cousin, a friend, a name. But every letter in the box was blank, not empty, blank. The ink had faded like it had never been there to begin with, all except one envelope, unmarked. Inside was a scrap of paper, yellowed with age, creased in 6 places. On it, in a child's hand, were 4 words. "You forgot me first." I dropped it. It didn't fall, it floated, then sank like it was being pulled downward, as though the floor had become water and memory had weight. That night, the fireplace lit itself. No matches, no kindling, just a flicker, then flame, curling up like a hand stretching toward the ceiling. Inside the hearth, the fire burned low and blue, and in it I saw her face. Not clearly, not all at once, just fragments. The missing eye from the doll, the dress from the photos, lips I remembered from lullabies I didn't know I knew, and a voice from the flames. "You're the first to forget and still remember." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then, from the hallway, I heard footsteps, small, barefoot, and Nate's voice, soft as breath. "She's showing you the beginning." I turned. He was standing at the edge of the room, shadowless again. "Whose beginning?" I whispered. He pointed to me. "Yours." I nodded, not because I understood, but because the part of me that still pretended to be rational had gone very quiet. Something else had taken its place, something older, something that remembered what I'd forgotten. He looked up at me, and for the first time since he came back, I saw it plainly. He wasn't scared anymore. He was resigned. "She's not trying to hurt you," he said. "She just wants to be known." I knelt beside him, my knees stiff and brittle. Who is she? His eyes flicked toward the fire. The first one, the first child no one remembered, before stories, before graves, before names. The fire flickered. She was left in the woods, he continued, a long, long time ago. They built houses over her, burned them down, grew towns, dug roads. But she's still there, still listening, still waiting. And you? I asked. Are you still you? He hesitated. For now, he said. But she remembers more of me than I do. I reached for his hand. He let me take it. Warm, small, familiar. I don't want to forget, I said. Not you, not her, not anything. He looked at me and smiled a sad, knowing smile. That's why she chose you. Behind us, the fire roared once, then vanished like a held breath released. The room went still. Then something knocked, not at the door, from beneath the floor. Once, twice, 3 times, and then the trapdoor to the root cellar creaked open on its own. I looked to Nate. He nodded. She remembers her home, he whispered. I rose, slow as thawing ice, and stepped toward the open hatch. The air from below was cold, wet, but not dead. It smelled of moss and something sweet. The scent of childhood left too long in a drawer. I descended. Each step down felt like stepping inward, like going back through pages of my own life I didn't know I'd written. The cellar was darker than I remembered, and deeper. It kept going. Wooden stairs turned to stone, then to soil, and then I was there. Not in a basement, in a forest. Roots above, roots below, trees like ribs. The ceiling was gone, replaced by a canopy of stars I didn't recognize, constellations twisted, wrong but beautiful. And in the center of the grove stood a house, the one from the drawing. 2 stories, big porch, windows boarded up, half swallowed by vines and bark, and on the steps, her, the girl. She looked at me like someone waiting for an apology. I stepped forward and said her name. I don't know how I knew it. Maybe I didn't. Maybe she gave it to me in a dream and I carried it without knowing. Alira. She blinked once. The wind held still. Then she smiled. And behind her, the door opened wide. The inside of the house was not like mine. Not anymore. It breathed. The floorboards swelled and sighed beneath my feet. Wallpaper curled like old skin. Dust floated in the air but never settled, always moving, as if disturbed by someone I couldn't see. Alira walked ahead of me, silent. A mirror over the fireplace that didn't reflect me at all. Only showed a girl, alone, turning in slow circles, mouthing words without sound. She made this, Nate whispered beside me. I hadn't seen him follow, but he was there again, just over my shoulder. Alira? He nodded. From everything that was left behind. Every scrap, every second someone forgot, every child no one remembered. I turned back to the girl ahead of us. She stood in a long hallway now, at the very end, beneath a crooked archway of tree limbs that had burst through the ceiling. She lifted one hand, beckoning. And I remembered the dream, the little girl running barefoot through the trees. It hadn't been just a dream. It had been a return. I was here, I said, my voice thin. Wasn't I? Nate nodded again. Once, before you were Edith, before you grew into someone the world remembered. My hands trembled. I left her. No, he said gently, you survived her. And suddenly I was crying, not out of fear, but out of something deeper, a grief I'd carried without knowing, a forgetting so old it had grown roots. Alira stepped forward now, her face clearer, not quite human, too still, too symmetrical, but not monstrous, just unfinished, like a sketch never completed. She held something in her hands, a box, small, wooden. carved with the same swirling symbols Nate used to draw in his sleep. She offered it to me without a word. I took it. My fingers brushed hers, cold, soft, like flower petals caught in snow. The moment I touched the box, the house changed. The wind returned, but it came from within. The walls trembled. Shadows slid across the ceiling like fish beneath ice. Nate grabbed my hand again. "She's giving it back," he said. "Giving what back?" "You." The box pulsed once, then opened on its own. Inside was a single object, a broken pocket watch. I recognized it. It had been my father's, lost when I was 8. I hadn't even remembered I'd lost it, but here it was, the second hand ticking backward. And with it came a flood, not of images, but of feeling. Laughter in a sunlit yard, the taste of raspberries in summer, the fear of thunder, a lullaby in another language, a name whispered once and never spoken again. I wasn't just remembering, I was being remembered. Behind us, the house groaned, and then the front door opened. Sunlight, real sunlight, for the first time in what felt like centuries. Alira stepped back, her face calm. She didn't need me to stay, not anymore. She had returned what I'd forgotten, and in doing so, she'd become real again. Not whole, but known. Nate squeezed my hand. "It's time." We stepped outside. The forest was no longer twisted. One eye still clouded, the other bright. And next to it, a second plate of pie. Still warm. Still waiting. Nate smiled. "She remembers now," he said. And somewhere, deep in the forest, the trees stopped whispering. They listened. We stepped back onto the porch, the wood groaning under our feet like it had held its breath for too long. The door swung open before I touched it. The house welcomed us. Not like before, not with silence and shadow, but with something gentler, a hush, not of fear, but of reverence, like we had brought something sacred back inside. Nate walked in ahead of me. He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, just moved like he belonged again, as if whatever tethered him had loosened its grip. I followed slowly, holding the small wooden box to my chest. Inside, everything was just as we'd left it, but the air had shifted. The pictures on the walls no longer changed. The mirrors held their truth. The ticking clocks didn't stutter or stall, and yet I felt it. Not absence, presence, subtle, watching, but no longer hiding. She wasn't gone. She was settled. The doll sat on the mantel, still and quiet, but I could feel a faint warmth radiating from it, like it had just been held. The second plate of pie remained untouched, but not unclaimed. I set the wooden box beside it, a token, an offering, a promise. That night, I didn't lock the doors. I didn't push the dresser in front of the back window. I let the fire die out naturally. And when I climbed into bed, Nate crawled beside me like he used to when the thunder scared him. We lay in silence for a long while. Then he whispered, "Do you think she's lonely still?" I turned to him, brushed a curl from his forehead. "No, sweetheart, not anymore." He looked thoughtful. "I think I think she just wanted someone to remember the beginning. And now, he smiled, now she wants you to remember the rest. And just like that, I understood this wasn't the end of the story. It was the middle. The forest hadn't let Nate go just to torment me. It had offered me something, not a curse, a responsibility, to remember, to carry, because memory. The air smells like cinnamon and old wood, and for a moment I can almost pretend it's the year before everything. Before he left, before he returned, before I opened that door. But I know better now. The world didn't change. I did. Some nights I still hear her, humming in the walls, whispering through the trees. But it doesn't frighten me. It's a reminder that even in silence, we are held. Even in forgetting, we are remembered. I keep the porch light on still, not out of fear, but so the lost know they can find their way home. And on the mantle, the doll stays warm. And in the mirror sometimes, I see a little girl behind me, watching, waiting, not for revenge, for recognition. I smile at her, and she smiles back, because now I know who she is. And more importantly, I remember.